We've wasted 3 weeks. And, this was a dumb move by those 8 members of Congress. Many of them are on my committee. I like, at least 6 of the 8. But at the end of the day, they had no plan. They had no plan. And Larry, this could stretch out another 2 or 3 weeks. This is unfortunate, and I'm ashamed that we're in this position. Hopefully we'll find someone that can get 217 votes soon.
Now, I've got to say, Willie.
That's experience and insight.
If James Comer's saying it's a dumb move,
yeah.
Like he trademarked dumb move.
Got patent.
And he's talking about a patent, I guess, on dumb moves.
You can literally scan it.
I mean, it's just such a mess, isn't it?
It is. I like how he also said, I like 6 of the 8. He did some quick math in his head, had 2 names in mind that he couldn't even bring himself to give false praise, faint praise upon. Yeah, I mean, to say this is a mess is an understatement. I mean, we've been over 2 weeks now without a Speaker of the House with important business in front of us. And now, so at 9 o'clock this morning, short time from now, Republicans are going to have an internal vote again to see who they want to be the next nominee. That's 3 weeks to the day after Kevin McCarthy was kicked out of his job. Candidate forum held last night. 9 Republicans vying for the speakership were given the opportunity to answer questions from fellow lawmakers, after which 1 dropped out. So now we're down to 8. 6 of the remaining 8 candidates voted to overturn the 2020 presidential election results. Only Congressman Tom Emmer and Austin Scott did not, though they signed on to a Texas lawsuit to decertify, so they're not totally clean on this either. That was a brief supporting that Texas lawsuit that would have invalidated the election results in 4 key states. Let's bring in congressional investigations reporter for the Washington Post, Jackie Alemany. So, Jackie, where are we as we wake up now 3 weeks after McCarthy lost his job?
Yeah, we're here again waiting for the 3rd round of the Speaker candidacy to take place. We're going to see members today after they made their pitch last night. These 8 members up for an actual vote behind closed doors. These events, this House GOP conference is what they call it when everyone meets in the House basement in a closed door meeting, the entire conference, were usually rare events, but now have become common occurrences where we all wait in the hallways to see who might emerge as the Speaker designee. And it's unclear who that's going to be. Right now, we have Tom Emmer, the congressman from Minnesota, who's really the 5th highest ranking member of the House conference. He is the likely front runner. He has a little bit of baggage. He is one of the few members in the running who is not an election denier, which has dismayed former President Donald Trump, who called him out in a rally over the weekend. And then there's people like Byron Donalds, Austin Scott. Byron Donalds is a younger 44-year-old lawmaker from Florida who's also actually caught a surprising amount of traction. Some lawmakers are worried he's a bit too green. This is only his 2nd term, but he has gained some support across the ideological spectrum. All of these members, these candidates, the 8 of them, have signed a pledge from Congressman Mike Flood that they're ultimately going to support whoever the winner is today. We'll see, though, if that ultimately is able to take the House to the floor vote to vote on one of these candidates. That still feels pretty far away, so we're just taking it meeting by meeting right now.
Let me bring in Mike Barnicle. Mike, this is such a crisis. It's a crisis not only for the Republicans in the House, it's a crisis for Americans, and it's a crisis that has global implications. You've got Chairman Mike McCaul, who knows something or another about world events, saying this, quote, "The world is on fire. This is so dangerous what we are doing," what his party is doing. "It empowers and emboldens our adversaries like Chairman Xi of China, who says democracy doesn't work." And what McCaul says his fellow Republicans are doing right now by being this reckless is they're proving Xi right.
Yeah, Joe, it's interesting. Chairman McCaul, the past month or so, even longer than that, has sounded like someone who does not belong to the existing very public Republican Party that we witness each and every night and each and every day on TV with their chaos. And with all due respect to, what did we call him? Dumb moves, Comer, that we were just talking about earlier. I was speaking to a couple of people yesterday, both of whom have come back from Europe on business trips in the past 10 days. And Richard Hasek probably have more information on this sort of thing than I do. But anecdotally, they were talking about fielding questions from respected European business people wondering about the foundations of our democracy here, given all that's going on with just the speakership in the House. I don't know what you've heard, Richard.
It's what you hear all the time. It's the Trump circus. It's the speakership. These are countries that they've put their eggs in our basket. Economically, more important, their security. And they are now asking increasingly, can they count on us? The fact that they have to ask the question, Mike, is bad. How they're beginning to answer it is even worse. And they're beginning to think, what do they do, whether it's Ukraine, what do they do about NATO, Middle East, if the United States is no longer there for them or with them? This is the first time it's happened so fundamentally, literally in this era.
Right now, this White House, of course, can't move to support the way it wants Israel and Ukraine because of the lack of a speaker. There is the possibility that Donald Trump could return to office a year from now, which, of course, worries global capitals. And, Jackie, there's also a government shutdown looming. We're just a few weeks away from that as well. And that would further cripple Washington's efforts both domestically and overseas. So walk us through what we think is going to happen these next couple of days, the role that Donald Trump is trying to play. I know he's no fan of Congressman Emmer and took to Truth Social to go after him in recent days. Is there anybody you talk to that thinks that this is something that could get done today, tomorrow on a full floor vote, or is this going to stretch on for weeks to come?
Yeah, John, well, I want to address the government shutdown portion of your question first, because it's something that I think is not a priority right now, even though it is looming and could potentially be disastrous. The continuing resolution expires November 17th. And right now, I mean, lawmakers have done nothing to move towards an actual agreement, which means that they're most likely going to have to pass another continuing resolution, which a lot of these House GOP conference members are in principle object to. But at the end of the day, the House has one job. They're appropriators. And they right now have only passed 4 appropriations bills. They have 8 more left, and there is literally not enough time to get those done. So whoever they do support for Speaker they're going to have to consider some short-term bill with help from Democrats. Once again, we're likely going to see a repeat of what happened with Kevin McCarthy this last time around, which leads me to the Trump factor here. You know, I think it really remains to be seen how much of an influence any sort of outside player can have. At the end of the day, McCarthy did have the support from Trump. Jim Jordan had a lot of support from Trump. That did not make some of these members budge. As Dusty Johnson told us yesterday, you know, it takes a lot to have these guys and gals moved by these external factors, even death threats, as we saw. So Emmer does not necessarily have the support of Trump, but it remains to be seen whether Trump is really actively whipping against him. And I think we're nearing the point where there's going to be severe political consequences for people if they continue to hold out and we go further with no speaker.
So, I mean, Trump's influence not necessarily making a difference, right, but there is a lot of consequences if they don't get this done. You mentioned the world being on fire and the threats from around the world, but there's also the U.S. economy to think about.
Well, the economic consequences are terrible. If you look at it, if you look at the instability, Mika, of what's happening when you not only have a looming government shutdown, but you have Congress shut down. You have interest rates, 10-year interest rates bumping up against a 5% margin, which it hasn't been, I guess, since the mid-90s. That means we're paying a hell of a lot more interest on the $33 trillion national debt that we have, that cuts more and more into not only our budget, but also the strength of the dollar, the strength of the American economy. There's so many things going sideways right now. The Republicans in Congress have to get their act together, or else it's not just going to be Israel and Ukraine and Taiwan paying for this. it's going to be American taxpayers and people with jobs. Things will get sideways really fast.
Congressional investigations reporter for the Washington Post, Jackie Alamany, as always, thank you very much.